Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ladies Get Paid Equal Pay Day Summit 2021. I'm so excited to be a part of this event. And I get to talk about my favorite topic in the world, which is investing to achieve financial freedom, which I think everyone should be working towards. And I'm so excited that you're here to learn more about this topic because it is something that is truly life-changing. It was for me, and I'm hoping that it will be for you too. So let's dive in. So the first thing is, who the heck am I? If you don't know who I am, I'm Delyanne Barros. I'm an attorney and money coach. And actually, as of this week, it's actually my last week at my full-time job. I gave my notice and I'm going to be pursuing my business full-time so that I can fully service my community. So this is a really, really exciting time for me, and becoming an entrepreneur full-time is like a total dream. So you've caught me in a very special time in my life. So in addition to being a money coach, I'm also studying to become a certified financial planner, mostly because I just want to learn about this field as much as possible so I can keep educating my students. But I am not yet a financial planner, so I want to be clear about that. And I'm certainly not your financial planner. So anything that I talk about tonight is for educational purposes only. It is not financial advice. So please keep that in mind while we are learning together. Okay. And then a little bit more background on me. I am 38 years old. I'm Brazilian. I was born in Brazil. I moved to Miami. I grew up there. And then I lived in New York City for 15 years. I now live in San Diego. So as you can see, I like a really flexible life, which is why I'm so about financial freedom, because I like having the flexibility to do what I want when I want. And at the end of the day, don't we all want some of that? So a little bit more about, my background. I have been featured and I collaborated with some of these brands and some of these publications that you may have heard of. And that little White House picture there, I'm really super proud of. I recently did a collaboration with White House where they invited me to do an interview with David Cameron, who is the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council. And I got to ask some questions about the new stimulus bill that just passed and is now in effect. So that was a really amazing opportunity. I've also been featured in quite a few publications where I talk about financial independence, specifically FIRE, which we're going to be talking about tonight. So like I said, again, everything tonight is for educational purposes, so let's keep that in mind. And before we dive in, I really want to make it clear that this is like a judgment and shame-free zone, not from like each other, of course, from each other, but really from yourself as well. I feel like we tend to judge and shame ourselves and compare ourselves to other people. And that kind of negativity is not going to help propel you forward in your money journey. Instead, I want you to feel like inspired and curious about some of the thoughts, some of the material that we're going to be covering, and try not to beat yourself up too much, because we've all made money mistakes. I know I have, and those are all learning, steps that we have to take in our journey. And we shouldn't shame ourselves for it. It's just our specific journey, right? Okay, so what have we been told by the government, by our employers, by the financial industry? Like, what are some of the messages that we've heard around money that's probably affected how you view money and how you approach even, decisions that you make in your day-to-day life? So our government our government and our employers have told us, like, if you just work if you work for 40 years, somehow magically at the end of those 40 years, you're just going to be set for retirement, and, that Social Security will be there to help you supplement some of those things. But unfortunately, it's becoming less and less true, right? Like, the government's assistance that was available to our parents and our grandparents is no longer available to us. Like, pensions don't exist anymore, really. They're becoming more and more rare. It's been replaced by the 401k. And if we learned anything from 2020, it's that the world is unpredictable and that we can lose a job at any moment. And so we have to be, agile and ready to pivot at a moment's notice so that we can supplement our income, right? We cannot just rely on our W-2 jobs because there's so much uncertainty in the world. And then from the financial industry, they tell us that money is very complicated and that investing is very complex, and don't worry about it. We will handle it for you. Just hand us over your money and we will do it for you. And they use all this complicated jargon to confuse us, and, everything from like the 401k, IRA, all of these different, abbreviations. And we're like, what is this? I feel like I'm having to learn a new language. So all of this messaging are things that really affect how we see our money, how we see building wealth, and it actually can cause us to stay stuck. So I want you to imagine this instead. So this photo is of me in Portugal. I'm in the Algarves. I visited a few years ago, and my goal is actually to move to Portugal someday and retire there by the time I'm 45. So I want you to imagine a world where you have complete control and power over your money. You're fully educated about your investments. Even if you do hire a professional, you can have an educated conversation with them. And instead of being talked down to and, have somebody being condescending to you about your money, which no one knows more about your money than you do. Instead, you are coming to them from a position of knowledge and power and telling them, hey, I know you're clicking the buttons for me, but this is what my goals are. And we need to talk about how we're going to achieve it. So that's how I want you to think about how would that feel to have that kind of power over your finances. So other ideas that we've been told about the stock market that may, be kind of swirling around in your mind. Have you been told that the stock market is just a casino waiting to take all your money? I hear this one a lot, that people just think that the stock market is just gambling, that you need to know how to pick the right stocks in order to make money, right? That if you don't know how to pick stocks, then don't even bother. Or that you need a lot of money to invest, right? Like money makes money. You need money to make money. I'm sure I've heard this one a lot. Or that you have to be debt-free to start investing. This is a huge one in the personal finance space. A lot of people tout this, and I disagree, and we're going to cover that as well. So for me, these are all myths. These are not things that are true, and it's actually holding us back, right? Believing these things, but it's very, it's become very commonplace to have these beliefs. So it's so important that we crush them so that we can actually start building wealth. So what changed in my mind? Because I used to believe those things too, right? So what changed? I discovered that I can achieve financial freedom and retire way before 65 by investing in the stock market, right? Which was something that literally blew my mind because I was convinced that I was going to have to work until I was 65. I'm like, I'm just gonna, and working as an attorney is super stressful, long hours. And I was like, wow, this is going to be my life until I'm 65. Like, that's crazy. And when I discovered that that wasn't true, it completely changed everything of how I plan my future. So what is FIRE, which if you haven't heard about this acronym before, it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early, but I like to call it Relax Early because not everybody wants to necessarily retire, right? But wouldn't it be nice to have the option? So you are really, what you're pursuing is the choice of being work optional or work flexible. So whether you want to work at all or whether you just want to work less than you're working right now, you're going to have these options if you're pursuing financial independence. So that's what is the big picture idea that I want you to have in your mind. So what is it exactly? It means paying yourself a yearly allowance from your investments and having the choice to never work another day or work way less, which is such a powerful thing to tell people because I think that FIRE gets this reputation of being all or nothing. Like you're either achieving it, you're either going to retire early or you're not, which is totally untrue, right? If you could like cut your hours in half and work part-time, isn't that worth pursuing? So I want you to know that there are options here. This is all about giving yourself options and flexibility. All right. So like I said, even if you're not retiring early, I still think that, everybody should pursue it because working until you're 65 is not guaranteed because you could lose your job, right? And so many people are retiring into poverty, meaning that they're living on less than $20,000 a year. And I lived on less than $20,000 a year when I was in my 20s. It's one thing to do it in your 20s. It's a whole different thing when you're in your 60s. Like that is really rough. And I don't wish that on anybody, right? So let's talk a little bit about women versus men. women are not investing enough money. We hold 70% of our wealth in cash, and 74% of men invest, while only 51% of women invest, which is a shame because we're actually really great investors when we do it. We know how to hold long term. We know how to plan for the long term. We're not overly confident. We know how to, make stable decisions and stick with them. So it's so important that more women start investing. And not only when we do invest, we end up paying more to invest. So we usually are more likely to hire a financial planner because men tend to be overconfident and just do it themselves. But this service is actually costing us so much money that's eating away at our profits. And it's also opening us up to fraud or mismanagement of our money if we're just blindly handing over money to someone and we're not understanding what is being done with our money, right? So even if you're going to hire a professional, it's so important that you know these things. So this means that pursuing financial independence is a long-term strategy that is the right choice for everyone. And I want you to know that investing is not intuitive. It is not common sense. So don't think that there's something wrong with you that other people are just talking about and you're like, I don't understand why I don't get it. It's not intuitive, right? You don't just download an app and you're immediately going to know how to invest. You actually do have to invest some time into your education and learning, which is why you are here tonight. So let's start covering some three secrets that I have about investing, which I think is going to help you, catapult yourself into this world. One is you can be a passive and lazy investor and still make money in the stock market, which is the only time in life really that you're going to be rewarded for being passive and lazy, right? Can't really be passive and lazy in most things. You can here with investing. And so let me explain to you why that is. So first of all, let's think about what is the stock market. Stock market is basically like a market, right? It's literally a market where you go and you buy things. So think about it like a flea market. And you have all these little different stands here are companies. And each, when you go and buy a little piece of, when you buy a product from one of these little stands, it's like buying a stock. So you now own a little piece of that company, right? So each item from each stand is a stock share. Each stand is a company. The entire market, the entire flea market is the stock market. So if you buy an antique and it happens to become more valuable in the future, that's similar to buying like a share of Apple or Microsoft 10 years ago. And now, wow, that's like so much more valuable today. That's great, right? But the other side of the coin is what if you buy something and it turns out to be like a knockoff and it's worthless and you actually lose money on it, right? So that's similar to buying like a share of Enron or Hertz or GameStop, which has now like plummeted. So, this is what it's like having to choose which companies do you want to buy and how to buy individual stocks. So how do you know which stocks are winners and which ones are losers? And another thing you need to understand is that this, day trading, which goes along with buying individual stocks, is the idea of like buying and selling things really quickly, usually like within the same day, within the same week. Anything like that is considered day trading, where people are trying to make quick cash. It's super dangerous and it's very, very difficult to actually make money consistently over a long period of time when you try to do it. And I think it's actually higher than 85%. I think it's closer to 90% of hedge fund managers can't do it consistently. So they're able to do it for a few years, but when you look at it a longer period of time, 15, 20, 30 years, they're not able to consistently make money day trading. So what's the deal? Is there a better way to do this that's safer than individual stocks and tested over decades? And it is. Instead of just buying individual stocks, you can actually, which increases your risk, you can buy the entire stock market, right? You can buy what's called index funds and exchange traded funds, ETFs. So maybe you've heard of these before, but what exactly are they? So they're a giant collection of stocks where you can actually purchase, like I said, the entire stock market. So these are just some examples from Vanguard index funds and an ETF, which basically are called their total stock market index fund, total stock market ETFs. So not only are you getting thousands of stocks in there, pieces, you're going to own little pieces of all of these different companies, but you're also, it's going to be very, very inexpensive, right? So there's mutual funds that are there. Let me explain. Mutual funds is like the umbrella term. Beneath mutual funds are index funds and actively managed funds. The actively managed funds are usually like the things that have traditionally been sold to people, right? And those are more expensive and they're trying to beat the stock market. Index funds are inexpensive. They're just trying to track the stock market, and they are, like I said, lower fees, which we want. So the trick here is you're not trying to beat the stock market. You're trying to be the stock market. You're literally just trying to copy what the stock market is doing. And why is that? Because if you look at the history of the stock market, it has grown a lot over time. Yes, there are dips in between, right? When you look at the left-hand side, this is what happened in March. It looks so drastic. It's like we fell off a cliff. But when you look to the right, you see how over time it's continually to increase. So you have to hold on during the dips and during the crashes, but over time, your money is going to consistently gonna grow. So the trick here is to hold on and stay. So if you look at the history of the stock market from 1980 to today, it's grown at about 11.6%, but to adjust it for inflation, you can say somewhere around 8.5% a year. So it doesn't mean that every single year it's going to grow 8.5%, but it's the average. You got to think about it like the GPA of the stock market. So here's like an example of the S&P 500 returns. So you see that there are way more positive years than negative years. But what you do is you add the positive to the negative, you divide it by the total, boom, there's your average, right? So on average, the stock market is consistently growing and going up. But you have to hold on the years where it's down, where everybody else is panicking. You have to stay cool and not panic. And that takes, some knowledge and some willpower. So secret number 2, you do not need a lot of money to make money in the stock market, right? What you actually need is time. And that's tying into what I just showed you. The fact that you have time ahead of you is really what's going to help you reduce your risk in the stock market. So how much do you need right now? Let's think right now, to never work again or cover most of your living expenses. So what is this? What we like to call the FIRE number. So you have to think about today, how much do you need to cover your yearly expenses? You can think about it today, or you can try to project out 20, 30 years in the future. So let's say maybe you have a mortgage today, but you know that's going to be paid off in the future. So you don't have to include the mortgage in there. But if you just want to start with, let's say, whatever you spend this like now and start running your calculations from that, that's a good starting point. So here's an example. Somebody wants their investments to pay them $35,000 a year so that they can cover their costs. So that's $2,900 a month. So that means you're going to take 35,000 times 25, that equals 875. That's your FIRE number, right? So now you know, okay, this is how much I need to have invested total in the stock market, and then I'm good. I don't have to invest any more money. I've reached my financial independence number. Now that amount is going to continue to grow over time and pay me $35,000 a year for the rest of my life. So how much and how long is it going to take to get to 875? If you try to save your way there at $1,000 a month, it's going to take you 73 years, right? So it's going to take forever. We don't want to go that route. So what if you invested instead? Now it's going to take you only 25 years, right? So this is the power of investing. It shortens that timeline considerably. So that means that you invested $300,000 out of your pocket and it grew to 875. So that's almost $600,000 in just growth in the stock market. That's the power of compound interest. So you can go to investor.gov to use the compound interest calculator, and you can plug in different numbers and play around with it and see what works for you. So let's say $1,000 is too much. You're like, I can't do that. All right, well, let's say we do $650 for 30 years. Now that means that out of your pocket, you're investing $234,000, and the stock market grew it to $650,000. So now you have an $883,000 portfolio. So you can do one of two things. You can either invest more and shorten your timeline, or you can extend your timeline and invest less. So secret number 3, you don't have to be debt-free in order to start investing. This is a big one, right? And I am a huge proponent of this because I paid off $150,000 of student loans while building a $300,000 portfolio over a period of 11 years. And I'm so glad that I did, because had I not done this, I would be starting at zero today, right? Because I just paid off my student loans in 2020. So the old way, if I had done it the old way, I would have to wait to pay off all of my student loans from the smallest balance to the largest balance. And I wouldn't be allowed to invest till I'm done. This is like the traditional advice that we're being told, right? Like, you need to go pay off your debt. Don't invest until you're debt free. That, like I said, that would mean that I would be starting at zero today, and I would not be able to retire at 45, which I am going to be able to do now. So I actually started when I was 28. I actually missed out on 3 years of company matching because I didn't understand what a 401k was. I started my firm and I was like, I don't know what this is. So I ignored it. But finally, somebody in HR is like, why aren't you participating? This is important. I was like, okay. And I started throwing money in there like very slowly. But that is the account that I'm like the most proud of because so much it has grown the most, and it's the account where I've put the least amount of money in. And I'll show you those numbers in a second. So I wasn't maxing out the account. Like I said, I was throwing a few $1,000s in there a year. 2020 was actually the first time that I maxed it out, which means I put in the full 19,500 into my account. So right now my current net worth is it's higher than this, but it's $563,000, and out of that amount, I have $533,000 invested, right? So my FIRE number is 1.5 million. So I'm already like a third of the way there. So just to give you, these are actual screenshots of my investment accounts. These are the 3 that I have right now. I have my 401k through my employer, my brokerage account, and my solo 401k for my business. So like I said, though, and the one that I'm most proud of is the 401k because that is the one that I've been investing in for the longest, for 10 years. And it's grown the most because of growth in the stock market and my employer match, right? The brokerage account I just opened in 2019. The solo 401k I opened in 2020. And one thing I have these little grandma emojis here is because you can actually access these accounts before you're 65. You do not have to wait until you're like 59 and a half, which is the age when you can access it without paying the 10% penalty. You can actually access it earlier, but, and there are totally legal tax loopholes. I just want you to be aware of those because a lot of people don't know that. And then they think, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to touch that money until I'm 59 and a half, which isn't true. So that is the presentation for tonight. There's so much more to talk about. Obviously, there's like so many, the tax accounts that you can use, the tax savings accounts, the IRAs, the 401ks. How can you, cobble these different accounts together to create your financial independence plan? How is it that you go about analyzing an index fund and ETF? So there's just so much more that goes into investing. But here, I just wanted to give you guys an introduction to this world so you can start thinking about these new ideas if you hadn't heard about them before. I cover a lot of these topics on my Instagram and on my TikTok. So if you want to come find me, come to find my page. It's Delyanne the Money Coach. And I share not only, educational information, but I also share a lot of personal things too. Like I share my own personal journey because I'm on this financial independence journey with you, right? So I'm sharing it with you as I go. And that is really helpful to a lot of people to actually see somebody applying these concepts and to do it in such a transparent way. So I hope that I'll see you guys there. Thank you so much for attending this event. And I'll see you on the interwebs. Bye.